There are 3 tight ends that you must watch in the NFL preseason. We'll tell you who they are in this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as the playoffs wind down. The sports stop sporting the way we'd like them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnNFL to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You can also read her at Yahoo Fantasy. On today's show, we're taking a look at 3 tight ends that are worth monitoring during the NFL preseason. Kate, who is the first name up for you?
First name we got to talk about is Theo Johnson, who has been a little bit of a training camp darling here throughout the offseason. Let's talk about the opportunity here. Darren Waller has finally officially retired. Daniel Bellinger is kind of like the heir apparent here, but Theo Johnson, 4th round pick out of Penn State, solid receiving tight end, never was overly dominant there at Penn State, never had more than 400 receiving yards, but really saw his potential in year 4 in that offense. 7 total touchdowns in the past season. And I got to say, I'm loving the opportunity here. I'm loving the athleticism even more because the athleticism is really what's going to win you over with Theo Johnson. We've talked a lot about what characteristics we look at in terms of, a potential breakout tight end, maybe a sleeper tight end. And the resounding theme has been opportunity, athleticism, and Theo Johnson checks those boxes tenfold. Despite being 6'6" and 259 pounds, he absolutely dominated pretty much everything at the NFL Combine, 90th percentile or above, 10-yard split, 40-yard dash, vertical jump, broad jump. Like, for those of you watching along with us on YouTube, you look at a spider chart, which, we're looking for we want to see those big round circles, right? And it's about as close to a big round circle on his spider chart as you can get. That kind of athleticism at that size, 11-inch hands, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's like 3 inches bigger than Kenny Pickett's hands. I love that.
Or Kenny Pickett just taking
catching strays, and I don't care. But you know what? Like, again, on top of all that, I really like Theo Johnson. I like the opportunity, but this coaching staff just seems to love Theo Johnson. He's already taking reps with the first team offense. There's an article that came out, northjersey.com here yesterday that highlighted the fact that like Theo Johnson keeps getting pulled from his tight end room meetings to go see Brian Daboll. And you know what Brian Daboll wants from him? He wants to show him pictures of Rob Gronkowski and clips of Rob Gronkowski saying, this is what we expect from you. That's like ridiculously lofty comparisons there. But I think that just kind of shows you like they are looking at this guy as a big bodied player who I think could be pretty versatile within their offense starting on day 1.
Can I give you some of my concerns about Theo Johnson? Because I agree with everything else you said. Like, there is so much to like here. I am also a believer of this is the Nate Tice strategy at tight end. Just draft the biggest, fastest guys and figure it out later. Right? Those are generally the guys that end up working out. So I agree with that. And it would not be surprising at all if he's like by week 4, the starter at tight end for the Giants. My biggest concern, Kate, I want to go back to this graphic if you're watching with us on YouTube. He's wearing number 47. Like, can you be an elite fantasy option if you're wearing number 47? Because I think the answer is no. It's just terrible. It's
very fair. It's a valid concern.
Other than that, my only other real concern is, can Daniel Jones support a receiver, Malik Neighbors, a fantasy relevant tight end, and Theo Johnson? But I don't really care about that too much, Kate, because I don't think you're drafting Theo Johnson in redraft leagues to help you win leagues this year. And I think in dynasty leagues, you're drafting him because you're stashing him, hoping that he'll develop, right? I think it's pretty likely that Theo Johnson by year 2, and certainly by year 3, is going to have a different quarterback throwing him the ball. So I'm not overly concerned about the quarterback situation yet. I am concerned, and what I want to see in the preseason is, how far away is he as a blocker? And I know you don't get fantasy points for blocking, but being able
help you get on the field, though.
Exactly. Being able to block at least at an adequate, acceptable level will allow him to get on the field earlier. And then I want to see, how is he being used? Is he being used on just sprint outs to the sideline, or are the Giants trying to target him down the middle of the field? Is he being used as a slot receiver, or is he being used in line? Are they lining him up outside as like an X receiver and goal line stuff? I'm just fascinated by their thoughts here. And Kate, we saw something on the Hard Knocks with the Giants. The Giants had him as tight end 2 in this class. Like, they thought after Brock Bowers, he was the second best tight end in this group. They clearly love him, and I'm excited to see him on the field.
Yeah, and looking at sort of what he did in college, he spent, right around just over 50% of his snaps at Penn State blocking. And he wasn't he's not a superstar, but, wasn't necessarily a huge liability either. It hasn't allowed a pressure in pass protection over each of the last 2 seasons. You love to see that. But I do think his body size, his, this was like a relatively smaller class of tight ends that I didn't think fit the traditional blocking inline hybrid as much as they fit like a power slot kind of thing. I do think Theo Johnson is one of the guys that I think could stand out in both of those regards, be one of those more traditional tight ends. But if he can master it, then he could be on the field for the majority of snaps. And that is what I want to see from my tight end, because if you are on the field, you're
going to have opportunity
closer to getting targets on the field.
Yeah. All right, let's stay in the NFC East and talk about another rookie tight end that we are really excited about, Kate. Let's talk about our pet cat, Ben Sinnott, next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary streaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome back. We are discussing 3 tight ends that we are eager to see in the preseason. Okay, we talked about Theo Johnson. How about Ben Sinnott of the Washington Commanders? Why are you excited to see him?
Let's talk about Ben Sinnott, the prospect. There was a reason he was drafted in the 2nd round, 53rd overall pick by the Washington Commanders. He's got a lot to like. And again, we talked about the athleticism component. We talked about the opportunity component. There's not a ton of competition in the tight end room there in Washington. But the additional component that, you have from Ben Sinnott coming out of Kansas State is the fact that he was more productive. That's the edge he has over Theo Johnson. Yeah. Over his 3 seasons, saw an increase in terms of his total receiving yards year over year, total receiving touchdowns year over year. As a true freshman, just 2 receptions, 15 yards. Saw his role increase significantly as a sophomore, 447 yards, 4 touchdowns, before finally managing that 676 receiving yards, 6 touchdown season there that punctuated an awesome career there. Now, again, we talked about athleticism. He doesn't quite have the size component that a Theo Johnson has. He's a bit smaller, just under 6'4", 250 pounds. But again, checks a lot of boxes in terms of that overall athleticism that you're going to love. 4.68 40-yard dash that ranks in the 70th percentile. Uber explosive 40-inch vert that's 97th percentile for the tight end position, 94th percentile for the broad jump. The 3-cone drill, 96th percentile, 6.82. Like, the change of direction skills are there. The athleticism is there. The college production is there. He just checks so many of these boxes, but the boxes he doesn't check are the same, the same level of hype throughout training camp so far that we've seen from Theo Johnson. Because I think people have been so hyped about Ben Sinnott. He didn't get off to the hot start. So I just want to see how they utilize him in this Washington Commanders offense.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see more than anything where he's lining up, because I know a lot of people coming into the NFL draft thought he was more of an H-back than a traditional tight end, right? He is somebody that you use in the backfield, you use off the line of scrimmage, or you use in the slot. I'm fine with all those. Like, you could be a productive tight end by not being a 6'6", 265-pound guy that plays in line all the time. I want to see how they're using him, where they're deploying him, and then what type of targets is he getting? Are they giving him screen passes? He's very good after the catch. Like, that's one of the things, Kate, that you and I were drawn to him so much in the pre-draft process. Is this is one of the best tight ends in the draft after the catch. Are the Commanders trying to figure out ways to get him the ball in space, or are they trying to utilize him just like a ordinary tight end? Because if that's the case, I'm just going to be way lower on Sinnott in redraft leagues and in dynasty leagues than I was maybe back in the pre-draft process. But he's a very interesting tight end prospect with a lot of athleticism that I just want to see what it looks like when it gets on an NFL field.
Yeah, I think all of those questions are valid. He's only 22 years old, too. He's, again, only played 3 seasons at Kansas State. So, like, I do think there's probably some, something left untapped here that we, the ceiling is probably pretty high for Ben Sinnott, all because of the athleticism, what we've seen so far from him. You mentioned the yards after the catch ability, 6.8 yards after the catch per reception. That ranked in the 75th percentile for tight ends this past season. Yards per route run, a pretty effective stat for predicting like how efficient you are going to be, in general, and commanding targets. 2.02 yards per route run, 85th percentile for the tight end position. There's a lot to like about Ben Sinnott, but I do think the preseason is going to be a bit of an eye-opener because we are going to see him, get some work. I don't think he's done. He hasn't blown the doors off anybody here through training camp. So I think he's going to get plenty of reps. And you're right. I think seeing how they're going to utilize him in this offense is going to be key.
And unfortunately, probably won't see it much with Jaden Daniels. And that's probably the biggest bummer of this all, because I got to imagine, Kate, that Washington's going to be pretty safe with Jaden Daniels. Like, maybe he'll get a couple series, but he's not going to be playing an entire half or anything like that. So I think I think Ben Sinnott playing with Jaden Daniels is going to look a lot different than Ben Sinnott playing with Marcus Mariota or whatever quarterback is throwing him the ball. So we might not be able to tell a ton from the preseason, but again, I just want to see him on the football field. He was one of my favorite prospects in this draft. I think his game and his style of play at the tight end position is becoming more in vogue. And I think more teams are looking for that type of player. I think even Sam Laporta, to a degree, was like this last year. I think Ben Sinnott could do a similar impression with the right offense, with the right team. I'm just excited to watch him play. That's all.
I'm very excited. I think that dynasty managers in particular have really caught on to the Ben Sinnott hype train. And this will be maybe a moment. Let's say he doesn't shine in the preseason, right? Like that's also maybe going to create a buy low moment for Ben Sinnott. Because I do think all of the components that you're looking for in a breakout tight end are there. And I think that even if it doesn't translate as quickly, again, we've been kind of spoiled with rookie production at the wide receiver position, at the tight end position. So like sometimes we do have to preach patience, especially given the fact that this guy's 22 years old, playing a very nuanced position. So like, even if he doesn't shine, I'm not going to be out on Ben Sinnott, but man, if that price tag takes a little dip because we don't see, maybe exactly what we were hoping for right out of the gate, that's a prime opportunity for me to pounce and buy low.
So one of the things that we've identified here, we're looking for supreme athletes at the tight end position in the preseason. Like if we're going to gamble on like late round tight ends, we want to gamble on upside and athleticism. Kate, there is not a tight end that has more size and athleticism than Jelani Woods of the Indianapolis Colts. We will talk about him next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Listen, I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. My favorite thing in the world is at the end of the day, sitting on my couch, turning on a couple of my TVs and seeing what sports are on TV. But unfortunately, with the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs over, we just have fewer and fewer games to watch. And the sports aren't sporting the way that I'd like them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So just head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers, on Monday's show, we're going to continue to get you ready for the preseason. Every team in the NFL will play a preseason game next week. We'll continue to look at some of the biggest training camp winners and losers. Pads have come on for all 32 teams this week, so be on the lookout for that on a Market Monday edition of the show. But Kate, let's finish up here with Jelani Woods, who missed almost, I believe, all of the 2023 season with an injury. This was somebody who, according to the relative athletic score, the best athlete we've ever seen at the tight end position. Why are you excited to watch him in the preseason?
I mean, let's just talk about Jelani Woods. Like you mentioned the athleticism. Let's talk about that. Coming out of Virginia in 2022, the combine, Marcus, he was just over 6'7" and 1/8 inches. That's psychotic. He's 97th percentile for the tight end position. 253 pounds. He's got long arms, 34.5-inch arms, 94th percentile for the tight end position. What you're looking at in terms of that explosive ability, 4.61 40-yard dash. That's 88th percentile at that 6'7", 253-pound mark. In short, he's an explosive dude for that size, especially for that length. You don't really expect players with that type of length to be able to move the way that Jelani Woods can move. Now, as a rookie, ranked dead last among all qualifying tight ends, 41 qualifying tight ends in terms of separation percentage. But you know what the beauty of being 6'7" and 250 pounds is? You've got play strength and you've got the fact that you are just taller than everybody else. So
I was going to mention, Kate, you're not separating like hip to hip from a defender, but you're separating from like head up, right? Because there's no defender that's going to be able to knock passes away when you're that big.
Yeah, like that, so whatever he lacks in terms of that ability to separate, which like maybe we're going to see, some progress here. Again, missed his second NFL season due to injury, which was super unfortunate. 15 games as a rookie, posted 312 receiving yards, 3 touchdowns. And this is a better offense than he played on as a rookie. Now, with that, like I do think there's an opportunity here to earn this starting role with the tight ends, because that position does feel pretty wide open. My only question is how many targets do you think, that starting tight end role is really going to amount to? Because this is kind of a crowded receiving core. Like, you have Michael Pittman at the top. You have Josh Downs, who, like what we've seen so far, he hasn't been overly dominant, but like you add in A.D. Mitchell and you have Alec Pierce. Like there's a lot of bodies here. So like, what do you think is the ceiling here for Jelani Woods if he's fully healthy?
It is crowded, but it's crowded at the wide receiver position and not at the tight end position. Like there's Kyle Granson. Like there's just not a lot at the tight end position where Jelani Woods has to climb to get up to the top of the depth chart. And I think in a Shane Steichen offense that utilizes RPOs and play action so much and so heavily, that there is a role for somebody like Jelani Woods, who is a big seam stretcher, to get a lot of valuable targets. And I think he's going to be one of these guys where, he might only catch 4 passes in a game, but it could be for 75 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? Because of where he's getting those targets. It's just the health. Like we saw it in flashes. I remember in 2022, the Colts played your Pittsburgh Steelers, and Woods had his breakout game. And I thought, oh man, this is happening. Like this is Jelani Woods. And then injuries have kind of derailed his career since then. But he is one of these guys that is just so unique. And I think he's so much more talented than all the other tight ends in the roster that he could pretty clearly win this job. And all of a sudden, he's the guy after Michael Pittman that has the most consistent targets week in and week out. And it's Josh Downs and A.D. Mitchell and all these other receivers that are fighting for week-to-week work. I think there is a path for Jelani Woods to have a consistent role in this offense, but I think it starts with having a good training camp proving that not only can he stay healthy, but he can be this dynamic receiving weapon.
Yeah, I think that's super fair. And if nothing else, I just want to point out the fact that based on his size alone, the potential for utilization in the red zone, which, like, let's just be honest, outside of the top 6 tight ends any given week, usually what you're looking for is a guy with touchdown potential. And usually those guys that maybe have 40 yards and a touchdown are the ones that end up being ranked, between tight end 6 and tight end 12. Like that's usually how this works out. There's the cream of the crop, and then there are the guys that manage a score, manage a big week in receiving yards. But I think Jelani Woods could fit that bill just based on his overall size. And I'm going to project that this is a team that's going to be visiting the red zone fairly often.
They're going to be a good offense, right? It just feels like this is going to be a good offense.
I like the coaching staff. I like the personnel. And I just think there could be a lot of opportunity here for Jelani Woods to be this sneaky, very sneaky tight end option, if he can stay healthy to, maybe not be your tight end 1, but he's going to be a good guy that I want to have on my roster, because any given week, let's say I'm dealing with injuries or bye weeks, I feel like if he shows out, his role could be amounting to something that's like a decent fill-in in case your tight end 1 goes down.
Jelani Woods is the type of player that I love to have at the end of my benches, not only in dynasty leagues, but in redraft leagues, because if he hits, he can be a game changer for your team. But I think you're going to know within 2 weeks of after the preseason and within 2 weeks of the regular season, like if he's only playing 15 snaps a game, you cut him and you move on. But if he's at every down starter in a RPO heavy offense and Anthony Richardson staying healthy, or even let's say he doesn't stay healthy, it's Joe Flacco throwing him the ball. We saw last year how David Njoku went nuclear once Joe Flacco was the quarterback. Jelani Woods is the type of tight end that I want to have at the bottom of my roster, just because if it happens, we're talking about somebody who could be a top 5, top 6 tight end, currently being drafted as tight end 30 in your dynasty leagues. That is way too low given his potential ceiling.
Yeah, lofty upside, tight end 1 upside. But again, if he can stay healthy, I would expect his ADP to be much higher heading into the 2025 season than it is right now.
Crossing our fingers that he can stay healthy, and we really hope that we can see some big moments in the preseason, because I'm telling you right now, all it's going to take is like 2 catches, right? If he has 2 incredible catches down the seam and makes a play, after the catch, he's going to go from tight end 30 all the way up to tight end 20. He's going to be drafted around the Noah Fant, Isaiah Likely, Luke Musgrave range. And that's how quickly these things can happen. So keep an eye on Jelani Woods during the NFL preseason. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We are free and available on all platforms. Go follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. Make sure you're reading her at Yahoo Fantasy. I'm at Marcus_Mosier. Enjoy your weekend, and we will get you ready for more preseason action on Monday.